Coming up on Lindenwood News, a large aerospace manufacturer, Boeing, is starting to lay off 10% of its workforce. More on how this is affecting the St. Louis workforce in the long run.
We sit down with political science professor Hasto Marty to discuss how Gen Z impacted the 2024 election.
And an outbreak of E. coli has been found in packages of produce. We have what you need to know to protect yourself.
Those stories and more ahead on Lindenwood News.
Welcome to this edition of Lindenwood News. I'm Elizabeth Boaz.
And I'm David Kruse. A shooting in Soulard puts a teen in critical condition Saturday night. Police say the shooting took place on the 800th block of Russell Boulevard in the Soulard neighborhood just before 10 p.m. When police arrived on the scene, they found a 17-year-old boy who was shot in the chest. Witnesses down the street claim they heard at least 75 gunshots. Police have not released a suspect at this time.
So what goes into the ever-changing gas prices we all pay? This week I was able to go and check it out.
It's common knowledge that most Americans drive. And what do most Americans need in their car in order for it to run? Gas. Today we're going to be taking a deeper look into companies and seeing how their hours and their prices affect who's going to be coming to their store.
As Americans, when are we not trying to save an extra dollar here or there? Since most of us are driving really long distances anyway, we see a lot of gas stations, and most people I know are always hunting for the best gas prices. What actually goes into the constant changes of gas prices? Luckily enough, I was able to speak to Professor of Economics at Lindenwood University, Dr. Black.
So summer gas is more expensive because they have to mix the fuel in a way that has less emission effects and things like that. That's not the case in the winter, so the gas is cheaper to produce.
But prices aren't the only thing impacting sales. Like Sam's Club, yes, it's cheaper most of the time, but they're not open 24/7 like most local gas stations are. Here's how one student shops for gas.
I'm going to go with the cheapest places. It's just, I'm a college student, don't have a lot of money, so you got to spend it accordingly. And plus, the cheapest gas, that's the place for me.
How come some gas stations are way cheaper than others, though?
The gas itself for those independent stations is a major driver of their profits is the revenues they can make on those gas sales. That's very different from a place like a Costco or Sam's, where they use it more as a marketing strategy to draw customers in.
And just like that, it all starts to make sense. That's how some gas stations are cheaper than others. I'm Elizabeth Boaz for LU News.
Boeing layoffs are affecting over 200 engineers and over 100 St. Louis-based mechanics. The new CEO, Kelly Ortberg, claims that the cuts are simply part of bringing the aerospace manufacturer back to profitability. St. Louis area workers are being hit hard. Over 100 mechanics at St. Louis Boeing facilities were handed pink slips after coming back from strikes. More cuts are coming in the next few months.
It's that time of year where stores for one day drop their prices lower than ever for Black Friday. Lindenwood reporter Emma Hickerson got a closer look at these deals.
Get ready, everyone, because Black Friday sales are starting. With it being November, stores are not wasting any time and are getting their deals out for the public. Amazon is extra early this year with having their 2024 best deals out for viewers to see early.
Black Friday is a well-known day in America. It's when stores everyone knows and loves have the best deals of the year on only one special day.
Retailers are pulling out all the stops this year, with early deals already being available online and in store. From big-name tech brands to your favorite fashion trends, discounts are deep, and some deals have already started rolling out. Electronics are also expected to be a major hit with the big markdowns on TVs, laptops, and even gaming consoles.
This Black Friday, I'm going to buy more of technology. I'm looking for the PlayStation 5. So I can play my game. This year, I'm more likely to shop online because of how crowded stores get. Also with the safety regarding shopping.
Target this year is starting early with you being able to purchase their deals today. They have 30% off on tons of items, from women's clothing, kids and toddler clothing, men's clothing, to shoes and slippers for all. These deals last until November 9th.
My favorite part about Black Friday is seeing the amount of people come out, going into stores, waiting in line, the excitement on deals and stuff like that.
Black Friday will start on November 29th and will be one of the busiest days of the year to shop. Make sure to keep an eye out on your favorite brands and local stores, and you don't want to miss it. For Lindenwood News, I'm Emma Hickerson.
A man is dead after a car crash on I-44 late Sunday night. Officers say the man was driving an SUV and was speeding past slower traffic. The man sideswiped a pickup truck while trying to merge lanes, causing him to drive back into the back of a semi-truck. The driver was pronounced dead at the scene. No one else was hurt, but the man is yet to be identified.
Several school districts are planning to expand the St. Charles County Apprenticeship Program. Fort Zumwalt's apprenticeship program is paid on-the-job training to get experience for their careers. According to the assistant director, it has been gaining popularity rapidly with an influx of enrollment and applications. The Fort Zumwalt's workforce development facilitator says their goal is to have over 300 apprentices in the county to help fill workplace needs.
Straight ahead on Lindenwood News, we sit down with political science professor Hasto Marty to discuss how Gen Z impacted the 2024 election.
We now know the president-elect is Donald Trump, and Generation Z headed to the polls to cast their votes in this election. Gen Zers are a section of the population that are roughly 12 to 29 years old. So today I'm joined by Professor of Political Science, Dr. Hasto Marty, to discuss how the majority of this generation, now being of voter age, impacted this recent election. Welcome back, Dr. Hasto Marty.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So I'm curious, this election was definitely an interesting one. Where do you think, so the majority of Generation Z was able to vote in this election. What issues do you believe were amplified by these younger voters?
So let me first lay out the general conditions, demographics of the election, and then we'll get more closely into how Gen Z fit into that narrative, right? So based on exit polls, about 155 million voters participated in this election. That's about 3 million less than 2020. Gen Z turnout was slightly lower than that average. They went from about 42% participated this time, down from 50% in 2020, right? And part of that can really align to the fact that some of their top issues were not the ones that the candidates were covering, right? Gen Z tends to be particularly interested in climate change and gun control or gun safety issues. And they're also interested in the economy, and that is what tended to push some of their votes this time, but their other issues weren't really addressed as much.
That makes sense. And then how does this mindset of my vote doesn't matter, so I'm not going to vote, impact this election?
So this attitude ties very closely with the overall skepticism that most Americans have about faith in governmental institutions as a whole. Only about 26% of Americans have a strong faith or strong trust in government institutions, and that percent is even lower for Gen Z. It's about 15%. So they tend to not see themselves reflected in government institutions, and they often judge themselves as being unqualified or less informed to vote. So they're tending to opt out. And when they opt out, this starts the whole vicious cycle where if a candidate can't count on Gen Z's votes, they're not going to amplify their issues. And then Gen Z doesn't see their issues amplified, and so they don't vote.
That makes sense. And then do you think that that also contributed to a part of this election where there was an potentially overwhelming amount of media for Generation Z to kind of get in alignment with what these candidates are campaigning?
Yes, because Gen Z seeks out their information in social media and non-standard platforms, they tend to get a rush of information, and it's hard for them to tease out the quality of the information they're receiving. It's hard for political messages to break through the other more maybe entertainment oriented messaging that they're getting. And so they may feel a little less informed, and wanting to, of course, use their vote wisely, they may opt not to use it, right? And so candidates now, for a large percent of the population, but Gen Z in particular, they need to figure out how to take their messages to the people. They're not going to be able to count on the eyes that used to listen to drive time morning radio or watch the 5 o'clock news on the local news channel. Those people are fewer and fewer. And so they have to figure out how to tailor their message to get on platforms like TikTok and to get on to, YouTube or X.
And then the voters that did take information and went to go vote, how did they turn up to the polls?
So they turned out largely to support Harris. About 51% of the youth vote supported the Democratic candidate, but that's down 10% from 2020. And Trump received 47% of the vote, but that was up by about 11%, right? And it's too early to see the deep numbers, right? We just have exit polls right now. But that shift occurred largely among men in this particular, within Gen Z, within this particular demographic. They shifted big time towards Trump.
And then how did we see voters physically put their vote in? Do you think they did absentee, or do you think a lot of Gen Z went to the polls themselves?
So we saw them take advantage of both, but by and large, more of them chose to mail in their ballots. And that is normal for this demographic because they tend to be living away from home at college situations during election time. But some of the largest lines and lengthiest waits that we saw were at polling places that occurred on college campuses. So many students wanted to be part of that actual day of elections experience.
And then now that the majority of Generation Z is eligible to vote, how did we see a shift in the campaigning that these candidates did? You mentioned earlier about really utilizing social media, but how did we see that shift from 2020?
So we saw that shift from 2020, and we even saw that shift, I would argue, during this particular election, right? All candidates know that they have to reach out on these social media platforms. Some are far more skilled than others at doing it, right? I don't know if you remember Joe Biden's TikTok ad during the Super Bowl, right? Yes. About cookies or something, I'm not quite sure. That didn't really go over well, even though that was on the platform, right? But both Trump and Harris were pretty skilled at getting easily digestible, clear messages onto these social media platforms and really taking advantage of targeted podcasts that were either targeted to people that they wanted to influence and earn their votes, like Kamala Harris going on more sports-oriented podcasts because she knew demographically she needed to reach out to men, right? Or Trump going on Joe Rogan to solidify his base.
And then how are candidates making sure to appeal to these voters, like through the YouTubes and TikToks? How are they shifting to get further attention?
Right, so they have to be very careful to figure out how to navigate this niche market because it's where the voters are, there's no doubt about it, but they run the risk of over-tailoring their messages to specific candidates. And when they do that, they can have their reputation called into question. They can appear disingenuous. And Gen Z, more than I think previous generations, has a very low tolerance for people who they determine to be fake. So if a Gen Zer is diversifying their, media diet, for lack of a better word, they will see different views from the same candidate, and that's going to further undermine their faith in government institutions and the people that they elect.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Hasto-Marty, for your time. We will be right back after this break.
Blacksmiths are often thought of as metal workers from the medieval era. I went out to find if that's actually true. If I were to come up and ask you what a blacksmith was, you would most likely have roughly the same answer as one of these Lindenwood students.
I think a blacksmith is someone who creates like armor, weapons, anything that can be used in battle.
When I think of blacksmith, I think of medieval times, but someone that does work with metal and makes weapons.
And while these students are not entirely wrong that a blacksmith would make something like this sword or other pieces of weapons and armor, there's a little more to a historical blacksmith. So I went to the Daniel Boone Home's new blacksmith shop and talked to one of the tradesmen.
He was the equivalent of the auto mechanic today. So every small town has an auto mechanic. Back in that day, every town had a blacksmith.
A blacksmith did many more things than an auto mechanic, though.
The blacksmith shoed the horses, he repaired the wagons, he made the metal parts to make the wagons, he made the spoons, knives, and forks for the household use. He would make pitchforks, he would make parts plows and reshape plows and repair them. He would make other farm equipment. Anything metal that you needed, you went to the blacksmith for. You didn't go out to the store and buy it. You went to the blacksmith and said, hey, I need this. And he said, okay, come back whenever, he would tell you when he'd have it done.
So while most of us think of blacksmiths as a job from the feudal age, making swords, shields, and armor, they were still around only 200 years ago, making more than just weapons of war, but anything and everything that their community needed. I'm David Kruse with Lindenwood News.
President-elect Donald Trump is already announcing his selections for his next cabinet and administration staff. In addition to his Vice President-elect J.D. Vance, President Trump has also confirmed 12 other cabinet members. The most notable names are Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as the Health and Human Services Secretary, and Elon Musk as head of the Department of Government Efficiency. CNN is updating a list of cabinet members as President-elect Donald Trump confirms his selections.
The Biden administration is sending a request to Congress for roughly $100 billion in relief funds to help Americans affected by the Hurricane Helene and Milton. This money would be divided out $40 billion to go to the Federal Emergency Management Agency Disaster Relief Fund for future disasters. The rest of the funding will go to helping farmers, housing, transportation, environmental, and small businesses. Government agencies, congressional approval is needed before this disaster relief fund can be issued.
Tropicana recently redesigned its classic bottle, and it has not been a hit. Tropicana ditched its clear plastic bottles shaped like carafes and replaced them with more traditional-looking plastic bottles. Tropicana sales have been steady for the year, but plunged almost immediately after putting these new bottles on the shelves. Sales declined in July and August, and by October, sales went down by 19%. The redesign included downsizing the bottle by 6 ounces. Prices on the new bottle are supposed to be lower, but not all stores are following Tropicana's price recommendation, leading to complaints of shrinkflation.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is investigating an outbreak of E. coli linked to tainted carrots. The CDC says the outbreak has caused 1 death and sickened dozens of other people in 18 states. Investigators trace the organic carrots to Grimy Farms, a carrot producer in Baxfield, California. They were sold under a number of brand names, including Trader Joe's, Wingman's, and Sprouts. Grimy Farms says that the recalled carrots are likely no longer sold in stores, but may still be in people's homes.
Spirit Airlines has filed for bankruptcy protection. The airline says guests can continue to book and fly as normal as it restructures its debt. Because of the filing, the company expects its common stock to be canceled and have no value. Spirit was left with little option as it faced mounting losses and $3.1 billion in long-term debt. It's possible Spirit can file for bankruptcy and emerge stronger on the other side, but it could also end up being bought by another airline or be forced to liquidate.
Coming up next, it's getting chilly outside as we head into the holiday season. We'll tell you when and where. Stay with us for the full forecast. Let's start with our national map. There are some cold fronts in the northern states of Minnesota and Wisconsin, with some cold air moving down to the Midwest, replacing the warm air. We have some cold and warm fronts meeting up in states like Utah and Colorado, then rainstorms in southern states of Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida. Now for our local map in St. Charles and Maryland Heights, it'll be a high of 65. For St. Louis area, it will be a high of 66 degrees. For O'Fallon, a high of 59, and for St. Peter's, a high of 65. Now with our 5-day forecast, on Thursday, it'll be a high of 49 and a low of 36. On Friday, a high of 50 and a low of 34. On Saturday, a high of 48 and a low of 33. On Sunday, it'll be a high of 51 and a low of 31. Finally, on Monday, it'll be a high of 49 and a low of 34. That's all for weather. Now to Lucie with sports.
We've got sports right up ahead for you. Stick around to see what's going on with our Redbirds. In a highly anticipated fight, Jake Paul beat Mike Tyson in a boxing match with a close score of 79-73. Paul landed a total of 78 punches versus Tyson's 18, making fans eager to hear that last bell. The fight originally had been scheduled for July but had to be postponed due to Tyson having an ulcer. There's no talk of a rematch, but Paul says he's not stopping boxing anytime soon. The New York Yankees are on the lookout for a third baseman, and they have their eye on Nolan Arenado. That's according to an inside source. Arenado is on year 5 of his 8-year, $260 million contract. This deal makes him one of the highest paid Cardinals. While this hasn't been set in stone yet, the idea of this trade has Cardinal fans wondering if we will lose another great player. Also, Missouri voters are closer to knowing when they can start placing their bets now that Amendment 2 has passed. The legislation concerning sports betting was a highly controversial topic for decades. After the recount of votes, the government expects companies to start the bets in the fall of 2025. That's your sports for today. Back to you, David.
The Lindenwood women's volleyball team scores a huge victory against a conference opponent with a 3-1 win. Tyler Edwards has all the details on the team's victory and what this means for their season.
The second-ranked Lindenwood women's volleyball team took on a conference opponent, Western Illinois, this past Tuesday, where Lindenwood was the host playing in Highland Arena. The Lions, who were led by Coach Will Condon, beat the Leathernecks 3-1 in the match. I had a chance to speak with Coach about how he feels the season is going.
I thought it was a great win for us. Western Illinois is a quality opponent. They have probably one of the best players in the outside hitters in the conference with Kruse. We were down 2 starters against Moorhead, and then having everyone back against Western, it was fun to see the team all together and play well at a high level.
We also got the chance to speak with Rebecca Yankee as she broke the record for kills in a match with 26 kills during the game.
I did not expect to beat it at all. Even last night when they announced, I knew I was having a good game, but I didn't know it was I didn't know I had that many. I can normally keep track kind of, but I wasn't counting. That was not a goal of mine because that was a lot more than I've ever had in any other year. So it really was just a good game. So it was very, very exciting and shocking at the same time. So really cool.
It's clear this team is special as they are ranked second in conference with a record of 11-3. Lindenwood fans will be able to cheer on these ladies in their next home match against Southeast Missouri State University this upcoming Thursday in Highland Arena, where they will have a chance to showcase their skill and show why they are one of the top teams ranked in the conference. I'm Tyler Edwards with Lindenwood News.
You might have heard of pickleball, the paddle sport taking the center stage for many in the past couple of years. For over a year going on strong, a pickleball-centered club is planning its season fall tournament. Reporter Craig Eddy takes us down to paddle up and check out the courts.
Pickleball has been all the rage in communities for many years, but has especially grown in the past 3. It's an easy sport to learn and can be played by anyone at nearly any age, which caters to its growing popularity. That's where Paddle Up comes in, a pickleball-focused clubhouse located in the Meadows shopping mall in Lake St. Louis. Paddle Up hosts plenty of club members all together playing pickleball and, according to some, has a very inviting atmosphere.
All I can say, it's great. A lot of happy people. People are really excited that this place came here to Lake St. Louis. And I can say firsthand, I'm a retired person that you need to fill a lot of hours in the day, and this is a great place. And there's a lot of people that feel that way.
I would say family. It's a community of people that are friends, right? People just want to take time out of their day, come and play and have fun, and meet new people that like to play as well.
Paddle Up has plenty of opportunities for casual play, but they've been hitting it off recently with tournaments and events from the past and the future.
They did a little fundraiser for a little girl, and they generated a lot of money. They actually closed the club and did this fundraiser and raised a lot of money to help this little girl that was in need. And that's just the kind of people they are.
We have a bunch of different stuff. So every month at the club we have a tournament. It's kind of that's the most competitive thing that we have here, where people can really kind of, try their best, try to become a better player and all of that stuff. But we have programs that go on every single day.
The center is full of eager individuals ready to prove themselves and make new friends, with pickleball bringing them all closer together. More information about tournaments and events can be found on their website at paddleuppickleballclub.com. For Lindenwood News, I'm Craig Eddy. Back to you in the studio.
For anyone looking for some animal therapy, there is a cat cafe right here in St. Charles. To learn more about it, we sent reporter Gia Buck to visit the cats.
Here on Main Street is St. Charles's only cat cafe, the Cat Den Cafe and Lounge.
The cafe opened in 2022 after owner Tanya Williams visited cat cafes and saw them as a better way to adopt out cats.
So when I visited a few cat cafes, I thought it was a genius idea to have kitties in a space that's open, where they can free roam, they can be comfortable, relaxed, and people can come in and get a feel for their personality.
The cafe is home to 20 adoptable cats and kittens at most times because it acts as a community foster for Smelly Cat Rescue. It is part of the reason Williams loves her job, other than just getting to spend her days with kittens, that is.
When they come here, seeing them blossom and open up once they know they're safe, they're loved, they're spoiled.
Visitors to the cafe love how welcoming and kind it is. 2 of the cafe regulars, Alyssa Moses and Zach West, come to the cafe almost 3 times a week. While they have both been to many other cat cafes, they prefer the Cat Den Cafe and Lounge.
They do a lot of different collaborations with local stuff like that, and I really like that it builds, like she said, a community for people to come to and everything.
West also pointed out how nice it is that the cafe works with other local businesses.
I feel like this one just has more of a friendly feel. Not that the other ones are bad. This one's just my favorite.
If you find yourself in need of some cat therapy or looking for a new furry family member, make your way to Main Street in St. Charles. For Lindenwood News, this is Gia Buck.
Some people come in and think that they have to be interested in adopting a cat to visit the lounge, and that's absolutely not the case. You could come and visit and support the kitties, support the business, just by interacting and hanging out with them.
The cafe is open to visitors Tuesday through Sunday. The owner, Tanya Williams, wants to make sure everyone knows they are welcome.
What a cat-tastic way to spend your afternoon. That's it for this edition of Lindenwood News. I'm Elizabeth Boaz.
And I'm David Kruse. Thank you for joining us.